All right, guys, here we go. Charlie Kirk on his radio show decided to defend British colonialism in the most absurd way imaginable. There's a number of things here that make me laugh. Let's go through it.
We have some amazing guests this hour. In fact, we're guest heavy today, and it's because the news warrants it. We have Bruce Gilley, who's a professor of political science, joining us, all about British colonialism, a very provocative topic that will assuredly make the media lose their mind about how British colonialism actually made the world decent.
Note the irony of the fact that there's an American flag behind him as he says this. There's an American flag behind him as he's sucking off the British Empire. You can't make this stuff up, man. You can't make it up.
Separation of powers, habeas corpus, freedom of speech, individual property rights, the respect.
Enslavement. Jacking natural resources illegally and unfairly. Brutality. Savagery. Militarism. He's only going to cite these other things, right? Only citing those. And by the way, the whole idea is they didn't extend those things to the other. The other were subjects under their boot.
And the dignity of the individual. Where did all those come from? The Magna Carta?
The dignity of the individual. Yes. Empires care deeply about the dignity of the individual.
The great thinkers of Edmund Burke to Shakespeare. Why is it that the world actually became more civil? Well, certain cultures are better than others. Saying that out loud is a thought crime. British colonialism was the most benign global empire ever, and it's kind of
benign global empire. How does any adult human being not realize that's a contradiction in terms? And by the way, even if I'm interpreting what he said charitably, that's not true. Because as time has gone by, each new empire has evolved in ways to give themselves more plausible deniability about their empire. Think of the US, right? For a very long time, world sole superpower. Very hegemonic. But what do? Well, if Britain decided we're just going to march into India and say, this is ours, thank you very much, at the barrel of a gun, making them surrender effectively, right? What did the US do? Well, we graduated to, well, what if we just have the CIA topple a regime, and then we put in a puppet dictator from that place who will represent our interests, and we can exploit the country, we could jack their natural resources, etc. So there has been an evolution, and by the way, got to keep it real, China has evolved that even more now, where China does the Belt and Road Initiative, which is like, okay, what if we have an empire through debt here where we build up your infrastructure and give you real tangible material benefits, but also now you're kind of part of our empire and under our boot. So as time goes by, empires evolve and change and become more secretive. And so it's not even true if I'm interpreting what he's saying charitably, but even the whole conversation is so dumb. It's like having a conversation about, well, who was the nicest to their slaves? Who gives a fuck? Why would we talk about that?
Sparked this conversation after the tragic and incredibly unfortunate death.
She was 96, bro. 96. It's so tragic, so unfortunate. Who saw it coming, bro? Who saw it coming? I don't know. Maybe anybody and everybody? Because she's 96?
Of Queen Elizabeth, who was, by all accounts, an incredibly stoic and wise woman.
By all accounts. All of them. All of them. Not some of them, not most of them, all of them. All of them.
Who loved her country, was also a devout woman of faith. And something that I'm very concerned about is that her death is only going to continue the secularization of Great Britain.
Yeah, because that's a very common reaction to the Queen dying. Oh, the Queen died. Now I shall become more secular. What? Now there's a march toward secularization in many places, in certainly most of the developed world, but it has nothing to do with the fucking Queen dying. What a dumb... Oh, Jesus.
It seems as if as the bloodline continues, people that will now be taking the throne, literally, and taking the crown, do not have the reverence for the church like she does.
Good.
Or she did, I'm sorry.
All right, so there you go. Very, very benign empire. Very benign. British colonialism actually made the world decent. It was a benign global empire. Well, I have to bring this up, of course, because, facts. Gross. Yucky. I know Charlie Kirk's not a fan of them. Here are just some of the atrocities carried out by the British Empire. The Boer concentration camps. During the Second Boer War, the British rounded up around a sixth of the Boer population, mainly women and children, and detained them in camps, which were overcrowded and prone to outbreaks of disease with scant food rations. Of the 107,000 people interned in the camps, 27,927 Boers died, along with an unknown number of black Africans. Amritsar Massacre. When peaceful protesters defied a government order and demonstrated against British colonial rule in Amritsar, India, on April 13th, 1919, they were blocked inside the walled Jallianwala Gardens and fired upon by Gurkha soldiers. The soldiers, under the orders of Brigadier Reginald Dyer, kept firing until they ran out of ammunition, killing between 379 and 1,000 protesters and injuring another 1,100 within 10 minutes. Brigadier Dyer was lauded a hero by the British public, who raised £26,000 for him as a thank you. The partitioning of India. In 1947, Cyril Radcliffe was tasked with drawing the border between India and the newly created state of Pakistan over the course of a single lunch. They took it very seriously. After Cyril Radcliffe split the subcontinent along religious lines, uprooting over 10 million people, Hindus in Pakistan and Muslims in India were forced to escape their homes as the situation quickly descended into violence. Some estimates suggest up to 1 million people lost their lives in the sectarian killings. The Mau Mau Uprising. Thousands of elderly Kenyans who claim British colonial forces mistreated, raped, and tortured them during the Mau Mau Uprising have launched a $200 million damages claim against the UK government. Members of the Kikuyu tribe were detained in camps, since described as Britain's gulags, or concentration camps, where they alleged they were systematically tortured and suffered serious sexual assault. Estimates of the deaths vary widely. Historian David Anderson estimated there were up to 20,000, whereas Carolyn Elkins believes up to 100,000 could have died. Famines in India. Between 12 and 29 million Indians died of starvation while it was under the control of the British Empire, as millions of tons of wheat were exported to Britain as famine raged in India. In 1947, up to 4 million Bengalis starved to death when Winston Churchill diverted food to British soldiers and countries such as Greece, while a deadly famine swept through Bengal. Talking about the Bengal famine in 1943, Churchill said this, quote, "I hate Indians. They are a beastly people with a beastly religion. The famine was their own fault for breeding like rabbits." Nothing like a person who has incredibly beastly actions accusing others of being a beastly people with a beastly religion. Well, what are you, and what is your religion, if you justify atrocities and genocide and concentration camps in the name of your religion? How's your moral code? How are your ethics? It's as beastly as it gets, right? So this is the classic thing, man. This happens all the time with empires. What happens is, as you do aggressive acts of violence, offensive acts of violence, as you do imperialism and colonialism and extract natural resources and oppress various people in various countries, as you do all that stuff, you suck yourself off and act like, no, but when we do it, it's different because we're doing it in the name of progress and decency and humanity and the right values. And every single empire in human history does this exact thing. They do this exact thing. As you commit the atrocities, you say, but when we do it, it's okay because it doesn't really count as atrocities because we're doing it in the name of all that is right and just and moral and good. And so it's really disturbing because even at this late date, this kind of stuff goes on. I mean, look, you can compare it to the U.S. empire today, right? How much did we suck ourselves off when we illegally invaded Iraq and occupied the country? You know, we said, oh, we're doing this for freedom and justice and to bring democracy to the region. So you cloak all of your war crimes in the language of humanitarianism. And that's exactly what happened with the British Empire, of course. You know, it happens with every aggressor. Think about what, Putin's doing in Ukraine, what Russia's doing in Ukraine. They have a whole narrative and a whole story they tell themselves about how, no, actually, we're the good guys and we're doing that which is right and just and moral and good. And, you know, that allows you to overlook anything and everything that you do that is bad. When you define yourself as the good guy by definition, no action you take can be wrong or bad. And so all you care about is our intentions. And the British Empire can say, well, our intentions were to civilize the savages and bring about dignity and humanity and common law and all these positive things. And it's all horseshit. It's all horseshit. But obviously, far-right conservatives like Charlie Kirk, they fall for it and they support it and they like it. And then you have to wonder to what extent is something like this racialized to somebody like Charlie Kirk? What do you mean? These are like gentlemen, white gentlemen with their powdered wigs who are just trying to spread the correct values all around the world. Well, if you really think that, I got a bridge to sell you, son. I got a bridge to sell you. And again, the hilarious irony of like sucking off the British Empire as there's an American flag right behind you. Very strange, very bizarre, very weird, very pathetic, very stupid. Ever since Adpocalypse, when YouTube defunded all independent news and politics overnight, we haven't trusted them. We know they can pull the rug out from underneath us at any time. If you enjoy this content, please consider tipping $1 or $2 per month on the Secular Talk Patreon. Link in the video description box below. Thanks for your support.